Hello and welcome to the Extension Network. My name is Terry Carter with the University of Georgia's Cobb County Extension, and I am in the Family and Consumer Science Department. That's also known as the Old Home Economics Department. So today we'll be focusing on food history, one of my favorite subjects. So this is part 2 of a 3-part series. So today we're going to be talking about some foods that I grew up eating and I thought everybody knew about, but after discussing what I'm going to be making today, I found that a lot of people have no idea what most of these foods are. So let's get into it and let's dive deep into what these foods are and also the history of these foods. So I'm going to start with, I think, something I think is the oldest thing here that most people won't know about. We'll talk about the rutabaga. This is our rutabaga here, and this is the rutabaga cooked. So let's talk about what the rutabaga really is. Well, it is a root vegetable, and it is a pretty big root vegetable. And if you go into the grocery store, you can purchase this, and this is what it'll look like. You'll see that the top has been cut off, and it's also been dipped in wax. Now that's to preserve it, and because if you don't do that, it's not going to last long. It has a pretty short shelf life, but it is a root vegetable and it does produce some greens. Also, we have here the turnip root, which is the root of the turnip green. Now, there are 2 varieties of turnip greens. You're going to have the rooted variety, and then you're going to have a taproot variety. Now, the taproot you cannot eat, but this round root you can. So when you're planting your turnip greens, you want to know which one you're getting. If you really want the root, then make sure you're getting a variety that's maybe called 7 top, but there are several different varieties, but you want to see that it's going to produce this root if that's what you're looking for. Now, some people may ask, what is the difference between the rutabaga and the turnip root? Well, you see the visual differences. First of all, the rutabaga is much bigger, and to me, it's a lot harder to cut and to peel. It's going to take a little effort. Be careful because you can cut yourself pretty badly. It's happened before. But me personally, I prefer the rutabaга's taste. It has a sweeter taste to me, even though it's a little harder to cook. It just tastes better in the end to me than the turnip root. And you'll also find that people would take the turnip root and add it to their turnip greens and cook it along with the greens. That's very common as well. Okay, so how do you cook the rutabaga and the turnip root? Well, what you have here are what we call ham hocks. Ham hocks, all right? As a term you probably heard somewhere along the way. What is a ham hock? Well, it is the hock of the hog. It is basically when you buy a ham, when you get to that small part, that is the hock. So a lot of times that's cut off and it is smoked. So back in the old days, everybody would have these in their smokehouse. These would last a very long time. If you look at this one, it's a little darker. So it looks like it's actually been smoked in a smokehouse. A lot of times nowadays, we find smoked meat has been chemically smoked. But if you can find that smoked meat that is naturally smoked with real wood, that is the best. So the ham hock would be cooked down. It is smoky smelling when you buy it. And so you would cook this ham hock down. Now, me personally, I like to cook the thing down to where the meat is falling off the bone, as you have here. This one is a little bit more intact, but I like to cook it all the way down. And some people may ask, well, what do you do with it when you finish? Well, you eat it if you so desire. Contrary to what most people think about foods and history and soul food, there really wasn't a lot of meat eaten because most people ate what they grew on their farm or in their garden. So you would grow a lot of vegetables, but most people didn't have a lot of animals. You may have one hog. I know growing up as a kid with my grandparents in Alabama, we always had a hog. So we had enough meat for just the 3 of us because we were a family of 3 to eat off of that hog all year long. So the meat was conserved. It wasn't like people are talking about, oh, you eating all this bad soul food. No, meat was something that you ate, especially something like ribs. That would be something that you would eat on special occasions, on holidays, maybe 4th of July. But meat wasn't something that was always around and you ate a lot of meat. So that's why I believe that a lot of our ancestors lived longer and better because they ate a vegetable diet. So you cook your ham hocks down. Once you do that, you're going to have a lot of broth left. So with that broth, I kind of divided it between four things. I boil the rutabagas in that. I also boil the turnip roots in that. And then now we'll move on to our crowder peas and speckled butter beans, one of my favorites as well. So let's go with the crowder peas, and you see the crowder peas package there. I'm not endorsing anybody, but it's going to be very difficult to find fresh peas these days. They're either going to be dried or frozen. And if you're using frozen, try to get a good brand, because sometimes you have issues with certain brands, but try and get a good brand that you know is going to be good quality peas in there. Now the crowder peas. The crowder pea is basically a southern pea or a field pea, but we call these crowder peas. This is what they look like here. Now these are falling apart a little bit. Once again, they're frozen, so they're not perfect, but that's what the crowder pea look like. Now to be honest with y'all, I would mix the crowder peas and these speckled butter beans together and cook them together, but just to let y'all see, I cook them separate. So here are crowder peas. All right, now the speckled butter beans, that's what's in this bowl. Once again, our speckled butter beans. Now that's one of my favorites. Speckled butter beans is something I probably cook at least once a week, or sometimes every other week, but I do make a lot of speckled butter beans. And so I'm always trying to decide, should I get lima beans or speckled butter beans? Now they are all in the same family. A speckled butter bean, speckled butter bean is in the lima bean family, but lima beans are green. Speckled butter beans are just that, they're speckled, but then when you cook them, they turn brown as we have here. Okay, so there you go, easy. Now, once again, I took the broth from the cooked down ham hocks, and I cooked my speckled butter beans in that, and also my crowder peas. Okay, so let's move on. So we're still looking at things that would have been grown in a farm or in a garden. And so let's move on to the corn. Now what I've made is called, it goes by a lot of different names. You can call this cream corn, you can call it fried corn, pan corn, but it's basically corn that's been cut off the cob and then you're cooking it down. Now let me show you what it is. Here's our corn, and this is what, this is after I've gotten it off, and this is what it looks like. Now I really want you to take a look at this, because what we're doing is we're doing what we call milking the corn, meaning we're getting some of the kernels off, but we're also leaving some of that corn in there so that when we go back, we're going to milk it and we'll have some liquid. So let me kind of show you what I'm talking about here, because y'all might not get it. In the meantime, before I do that, let me go ahead. I like to add a little heavy cream to my corn to give it a nice little creamy flavor. And I usually add a little bit of butter at this time too. You can have whole kernel corn or you can have a cream style corn. I prefer mine a little bit creamier, but if you want to cut the corn off of the cob, then you have whole kernel corn. But my mom and them, they make a creamier style corn, so that's kind of what I like to do as well. So I'm just going to kind of incorporate that cream in here. And I also have some green bell pepper in here as well. You could also add some jalapeno peppers if you want a little bit of heat in here as well, but I just have green bell pepper. Just add a little extra flavor. Okay, so going back to milking the corn. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take our corn and let's see here. I'm just going to kind of cut. And if you can tell, I'm trying not to go deep. I didn't go all the way down and get the whole kernel. I'm basically getting about half of that corn. So once again, I'm just going to go down, and I'm deliberately trying not to go too deep because I want to have a little milk left to make some liquid. And this is pretty easy. People, talk about getting the corn off the cob and it's difficult. I don't think it's difficult at all. Now, if you're doing it for a lot of people, yes, it could take a long time if you got to do, 15, 25 years. Okay, so we've gotten about half of that kernel off, all right? So if you look at this one and look at that one, you see that they look different. That's because this one has been milked. This one has not been milked. Now, how do you milk the corn? Okay, pretty easy thing. Just going to take it, and this can splatter everywhere and make a big mess. I'm probably going to have some on my red today. Okay, then I turn it this way. And it's just liquid that's left in here. And I'll be honest with y'all, in this day and age, we're getting our corn not from a local source a lot of times. It's already been on the shelf at the grocery store a long time. So I found that the corn doesn't have as much milk in it as it used to. So if you're able to find a local farmer and you can get some fresh corn, you're going to be able to, first of all, the longer the corn has been picked, the longer it's been picked and off of that stalk, you're going to start to lose the sweetness. From the time that the corn is picked, the sweetness starts to go away and you start to get more starch. So that's a lot of times why when you buy corn from the grocery store and go, oh, it's not so sweet. That's because that starchiness has started to set in, so it's not as sweet. So if you can find local grown corn, by all means do so. So all we would do with this, if we were cooking this, would be to add just a little bit of water or milk to it and cook it down. Now, when you cook the corn down, you're not cooking this corn down for long, y'all. It really doesn't take long at all. I would say maybe about 10, 15 minutes or so. Now, my friend Pearl, she said she cooked her corn for a whole hour. I don't know how. And she's going to be mad with me for saying this because she'll see this video. But corn doesn't take very long to cook. So for me, I just want to cook it because you can really almost eat corn raw. So I just want to cook this just a little bit, add a little bit of heavy cream or milk or whatever you want to. Some people will, if you don't have milk or cream, you can use flour mixed with water and make a little slurry paste of it and add that just a little bit of it at a time because it will get very thick too, in which case you'll have to add more water or more milk. So also with the corn, when you grew corn on the farm, we have cornbread. So with the corn, you can eat the corn like this, or you can take it and you can grind it up into cornmeal. So now you have cornmeal that you can use to make cornbread, or you can use as a coating if you're making something else. So corn, especially in early American days, was really important. The Native Americans used a lot of corn on a daily basis. And as enslaved people were brought to America, we started to use a lot more corn. And cornbread is something that is very important in Southern cooking. I would not eat any of these beans, peas, without cornbread. It's just a necessity. The two go together. So I hope you've learned a little bit about food history, and I hope I've introduced you to something new. And these are all whole foods. These are delicious foods, and these are foods that our ancestors was raised on and survived on. So think about some of these if you've never used them before. So I hope once again, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'm Terry Carter with Extension. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.